Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to create a mesmerizing bubbles animation effect using HTML and CSS. Imagine serene, floating bubbles on your page, adding a playful, dynamic vibe to any website. We'll work with multiple bubbles that will bounce around, making your site feel interactive. We're using simple HTML for structure and CSS to bring the bubbles to life. By the end, you'll have learned how to create this cool effect. So grab a coffee, hit that subscribe button, and let's dive into the world of bubbles. Let's start with the HTML. First, we move to the body section. We add a div with the class container to hold all our bubbles, like a bubble bath for code. Next, inside the container, we add multiple div elements with the class bubble. These are our floating bubbles. Inside each bubble div, we have 5 span elements, which will animate, making them look like they're floating and bouncing. Once all the div.bubble elements are in place, we close them and finish with the closing body and HTML tags. Now let's dive into the CSS. First, we add the selector body. We set the background color to this color to create a dark theme. Then, we set the height to 100 VH to make sure it covers the entire viewport height. Next, we display the body as flex, which helps us center the content. We justify the content to center so everything is spaced out evenly. We also align the items to center so everything sits in the middle. Next, we add the selector bubble before. This selector creates a special effect before each bubble. We set content to an empty string because we just want to create an invisible element. Then, we position it absolute so it can be placed precisely where we want. We set top to 50 pixel and left to 45 pixel to position it inside the bubble. The width is 30 pixel and the height is 30 pixel to give it a perfect circular shape. To make it round, we set border radius to 50%. We then apply background to this color to make it white, which will stand out against the bubble. The z-index is set to 10 to make sure it sits on top of other elements. We add a filter with a blur of 2 pixel to give the bubble a soft floating effect. That's it for the basic styling of the bubbles. Now, let's move on to bubble after. This selector targets the pseudo element after each bubble. We set the content to an empty string, so it has no actual content but still appears. The position is set to absolute to position it relative to the bubble. We set top to 80 VH and left to 80 VW to position the bubble's shadow effect on the page. We set the width and height to 20 pixel to make the shadow small, and we apply a border radius of 50% to make it circular. We then set the background to white so the shadow appears light. The z-index is 10 to place the shadow above the bubbles. For a blurred effect, we use the filter property and set it to blur with a value of 2 pixels. This gives the shadow a soft floating appearance. Next, we add the selector bubble span. Here, we set position absolute to position the spans inside the bubbles. We then add border radius 50% to make them circular, giving the bubbles their rounded shape. Simple but crucial for the bubble effect. Now we move on to bubble span nth child 1. We set inset to 10 VH to position it inside the bubble. Then we add border left of 15 pixel solid with this color. Next, we apply a filter of blur at 8 pixels to create a soft, hazy effect. Next, we add the selector bubble span nth child 2. This targets the second span inside each bubble. We add an inset value of 10 pixel to position the element from all sides evenly, creating a perfect center alignment within the bubble. Next, we use border right of 15 pixel solid with this color to create a striking visual effect on the right side of the span. Then, we apply a filter blur of 8 pixel, giving the element a soft, dreamy look that makes it blend beautifully into the bubble. Now, let's add the selector bubble span nth child 3. This targets the third span inside each bubble. We set inset to 10 VH to position it inside the bubble. Then, we add border top of 15 pixel solid with the color yellow. Next, we apply a filter with a blur of 8 pixel to give the bubble a soft, dreamy look. This will create a more realistic floating effect. Next, we add the selector bubble span nth child 4. We set the inset to 30 VH to move it within the container. We add border left of 15 pixel solid and this color for a vibrant look. Next, we apply a filter with a blur effect of 12 pixels for a soft floating appearance. Let's move on to bubble span nth child 5. We set inset to 10 VH, border bottom to 10 pixel solid white, and filter to blur 8 pixel. We also apply transform to rotate 330 degrees. Next, we add the bubble selector. First, we set the position to absolute so it floats freely in the container. Then, we set the width and height to 200 pixels to define the size of the bubble. Next, we apply a border radius of 50% to make it circular. We add a box shadow with an inset value of 0025 pixel bubble with an RGBA value of 255, 255, 255, 0.25 to give the bubble a soft glowing effect inside. Finally, we apply an animation called Animate 4010 with a duration of 8 seconds, an ease in out timing function, and an infinite loop to make the bubble move continuously. Now, we style the second bubble using bubble nth child 2. First, we set the position to relative to allow the bubble to move around within its container. Then, we apply a zoom of 0.45 to shrink the bubble slightly for a playful effect. Next, we set left to -10 pixel to move the bubble slightly to the left and top to -100 pixel to position it higher, creating variation in the movement of the bubbles. Finally, we add an animation delay of -4 seconds to make this bubble start its animation later than the others, creating a staggered floating effect. Now, we add the selector bubble nth child 3. This targets the third bubble and applies specific styles. We set the position to relative to position it within its container. We set the zoom to 0.45 to scale it down. Next, we adjust the right property to -80 pixel, moving it to the left. We set the top property to -300 pixel to move the bubble upwards. Finally, we set the animation delay to -6 seconds to create a staggered effect, making this bubble animate later than the others. Next, we add the selector bubble nth child 4. We set its position to relative, allowing us to control its position more freely. We add a zoom of 0.35 to scale down this bubble. We move it to the left by 120 pixels and to the bottom by 200 pixels. Lastly, we add an animation delay of -3 seconds to make this bubble animate later than the others. Now, we move on to the bubble nth child 5 selector. First, we set the position to relative so we can control its positioning within its container. Next, we apply a zoom of 0.5 to scale it down. We position the bubble at left 0 pixel and top 200 pixel, giving it some space from the top. Lastly, we add an animation delay of -5 seconds, so this bubble will start its animation a little later than the others. Finally, we add the keyframes animation, called Animate 4010. This will give our bubbles that mesmerizing floaty motion. We start with the 0% and 100% keyframes. At these points, we set the transform to translate y-20 pixels. This makes the bubbles start and end slightly above their original position, giving them that gentle bouncing effect. Next, at 50%, we set the transform to translate y-20 pixels. This makes the bubbles float down before they bounce back up, creating a smooth, natural movement. And that's it for the animation. With just these simple steps, we've given our bubbles a playful and dynamic vibe. Now that we've applied all the styles, the basic structure, and visual effects for our bubbles are ready. The body is centered, and the bubbles have that nice blur effect. All that's left is the magic of animation, which we'll add next with some more CSS wizardry. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this tutorial, give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more awesome web development content. Hit that notification bell, and I'll see you next time. Happy coding. That's all for today, my best friends. Thank you for watching. If you found this tutorial helpful, leave a like and subscribe for more web development tutorials. Don't forget the bell icon. See you next time, and happy coding.